Hello! Okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me, and welcome to my spoiler-free review of One Battle After Another, co-produced, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. I'm gonna shock some people here, by the way, but this is actually my first Paul Thomas Anderson movie to actually watch, to experience. I know I've heard and I know a lot about his previous films, Magnolia and There Will Be Blood. You know, There Will Be Blood is one of those movies that is on my list of movies to check, but I've never got around to watching them. I've never got around to watching any Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and I'm embarrassed to even say that out loud, but unfortunately, that's the truth. And that all changes now anyway, because I've watched One Battle After Another, and it's a dark comedy political action thriller. And the story follows a washed up revolutionary Bob, who's played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who finds himself living within a haze of paranoia, living off grid with his spirited, self-reliant daughter Willa. When his sinister nemesis, played by Sean Penn, resurfaces after 16 years and Willa disappears, the former radical races against time to locate her, forcing both father and daughter to confront the lingering fallout of his past activism. I found this film to be an incredibly mesmerising and compelling experience. I admired the cinematography within this movie and how the camera would be used, to the beautiful, gorgeous score by Jonny Greenwood. Visually and sonically, this movie is just a treat. It's a sensory treat. And with it being shot on 35mm using VistaVision cameras, it just gave the movie this gritty texture. It gave the movie a visual depth. It feels authentic, capturing the emotion of its characters' stories and themes in a way that I just feel like you can't capture with digital. And I'm just really loving how we've got more directors now actually using, you know, film again, because it just gives the movie a character and a presence that just you can't quite get with digital. And I think to tell a story like this in particular, I just think it adds so much to telling a story like this by shooting on 35mm, and I just absolutely adored it. It was just an aspect of this movie that kind of really elevated what they were experiencing. It sort of heightened and it became much more intense as a result, because everything just feels more tangible and grounded and real due to what shooting on film can really capture and what it can actually do to a movie visually, in how it sort of brings certain moments and scenes to life. And like I just mentioned, this is also then aided by the gorgeous score by Jonny Greenwood, which it's like the second movie within a couple of weeks that I've watched where I've absolutely adored the score, and it's also by someone that is from a band, from within a band, with Jonny Greenwood being from Radiohead, one of my favourite bands on the planet, and he just creates a stunning, powerful score here that kind of really captures and conveys what our characters are going through emotionally, the story in which they're on, the journey in which they're on, and just really sort of brings to life the themes in which they are exploring with these characters and their journeys in a way that is very powerful. It's very striking. It's a gorgeous score, and it's just aided by how this film is shot visually through the cinematography and in how the camera is used, as well as the performances from all of the cast. Everyone is great here. Leonardo DiCaprio is fantastic as Bob. He really does a good job in moments at sort of delivering when it comes to not only the sort of the more serious aspects, but also the humour as well. Like, there are a couple of moments where, you know, with Leonardo DiCaprio that really did make me laugh. You've also got Teyana Taylor, who plays the partner of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, as well as the mother of their child, Willa. And she's also superb here. I loved how she brought this character to life. There is so much depth there just through how she brings this character to life. I found her, whenever she was on the screen, within the frame, I just found her presence to be very mesmerizing to watch. She was absolutely great. And both these characters, they are part of the French 75, this far-left revolutionary group. And they have this nemesis who's played by Sean Penn, Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw. And Sean Penn in this movie is also fantastic. Like, I just love how he was bringing this character to life. There'd be these certain mannerisms that he would do with the character that never once kind of, like, it could have easily have fallen into kind of too cartoon-like, or perhaps a little bit too on the nose, or a little bit too hammy, but it never falls into that territory. And I just felt like he balances the kind of the more humorous aspects of his character, along with kind of the more dramatic, serious moments in a way that is very effective. And again, you know, it's these performances that kind of just give these characters a depth. And I just found myself very intrigued by these characters that these different actors are all bringing to life here in a way that I just found very compelling. Everyone is great. Like I said, everyone gives these kind of very nuanced performances when it comes to the kind of the more dramatic aspect of a story, but also kind of they do a very effective job as well when it comes to sort of the kind of the more humorous aspect. And as I've already previously mentioned, I loved how the camera would be used throughout the movie as well. It just, the way in which the narrative was constructed and how this movie plays out from a technical perspective with the camera, the cinematography, the music, and just sort of how the movie was edited. It was just very effective at immersing me into this story with these characters that almost has, for the first 20 minutes anyway, it has this kind of old romantic bohemian vibe to it that just sort of swallows you up within the drama and with what is going on with these characters and what they are fighting for and against. The entire experience has this kind of very kinetic energy to it right from the bat, with a very tight editing and narrative that is structured in a way that at first can be a little jarring, but I adjusted to it pretty quickly, and I found that it was actually one of the mechanisms in how this story was constructed that just allowed me to be locked in like I was, that kind of really just swallowed me up and sucked me in sort of into this story. At first it is a little jarring due to that kind of kinetic energy, but it just plays out beautifully when it comes to the pace and just how everything is structured narratively. There's this kind of very seamless, sort of smooth sort of flow to how it all plays out. At the same time, it's still quite chaotic, but it's the chaoticness never kind of throws you out. It works sort of within the kind of the character of the film, in what I felt like Paul Thomas Anderson here was attempting sort of with this experience. It's a chaoticness, it's an energy that never derails the experience. And the entire movie is kind of like this blend of different genres and sort of styles. Like, it's an action, it's a drama, it's, you know, a political thriller, it's a comedy. And for the most part, it all works beautifully. And I say for the most part because I'll get into that in the sort of when I talk about what issues that I did have with this movie, because this isn't a perfect movie, not for me anyway. Personally, it is a movie that has its flaws, but for the most part, this blend of different genres and styles works very, very well. And it also has this kind of Western film style to it, just sort of like down to what, you know, they are sort of exploring with these characters. You know, it's kind of has this kind of very epic feel to it, where we're following these two characters, this father and daughter, and it has this kind of very powerful story there, a very grounded story, a very human story, and just where these characters find themselves in sort of the situation, especially within the last 45 minutes, I felt like the movie sort of transitioned more into this kind of like, it just had a Western sort of style to it that I found myself really digging and I really liked. And in many ways, it kind of reminded me a little bit of a Quentin Tarantino movie. And for all the reasons that I just mentioned, I really liked this movie. I liked it a lot, but I didn't come out of it loving it. And that's because I did have a couple of minor issues with it that they didn't throw me out, but they were issues for me. And things that I personally felt like that it kind of struggled at achieving. Now, some people might disagree with me on this, but this is just my own personal opinion, my own, just how I felt personally. And I understand that not everyone is going to feel the same. I'm definitely in a minority here when it comes to sort of what I felt were negatives when it came to this movie. But for me, even though the film does a wonderful job at pulling me in and just swallowing me up within this story with these characters, it still failed to sort of really get me emotionally involved with these characters and their journeys. Like, I feel like the film is definitely sort of engineered, the story is definitely engineered for you to get emotionally wrapped up with what, the journey in which these characters are on and what they're fighting for, especially due to sort of how relevant it is with the themes in which they're exploring around politics. But I just felt like it lacked a depth there when it came to our main characters for me to really get emotionally wrapped up into this journey. So when I came out of this experience, I felt like that I'd been on an emotional roller coaster ride, because again, this is a movie that kind of, attempts to evoke these different sort of emotions, whether it be laughter, there are moments of levity here that at times works, at times it doesn't. And I'll sort of go into the humour a little bit later in the review, but I just felt like when it came to the characters and in how they were written, it just kind of, for me, I wanted a little bit more depth. I wanted a little bit more layers for me to get really emotionally invested into these characters' journeys. So when we get to that final act within sort of the climax of this experience, I am feeling sort of the thrill and the adrenaline and the emotion of what these characters are going through within that moment. And even though I'm having a really good time and I'm enjoying how these moments are being brought to life visually, emotionally, even though I can sense the pulse, like there is a heart there, it just doesn't hit me in a way that I really wanted it to. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that or feel differently to me on that, but that is just how I ended up feeling. And it kind of frustrated me because this is an experience that I admired for many different reasons. A lot of it from a technical perspective and just how these characters were being brought to life with their performances. But I just feel like the writing lacked a substance. It kind of just lacked the depth that I really wanted to sort of, for me to really get behind these characters emotionally. And I think what allowed me to remain immersed into this experience was down to how this film was structured, how the narrative was structured, and that kinetic energy, as well as every other sort of element and aspect that I've mentioned already. But that kind of does then also play in to that negative that I had when it came to me getting emotionally wrapped up into the story. So when it comes to the humour, it's this dark satirical humour here that this type of humour is right up my street, and this is the type of humour that really does work for me. It's my kind of humour. Unfortunately, it doesn't always land, or it doesn't always work, and it's just a little inconsistent as well. Like, you kind of got different styles of humour. Like, at times it can get quite cartoon or silly like and very absurd. You've also got it, it also can sort of be quite surreal. And, there are moments that really made me laugh out loud, but they're very few moments. Like, there's this one random moment involving Leonardo DiCaprio's character. I won't say too much because this is spoiler free, but he's running on a rooftop, and just the way in which that moment plays out, you know, it really made me laugh, because it's the type of humour that kind of really hits with me, that really works for me. But for the most part, at times it just felt very random. Like a character would say something to someone. Like, for example, Willa. She will say something to Lockjaw, Colonel Lockjaw, and it's a moment within the third act. And it's a moment that kind of felt so random, but also tonally just didn't quite work with the movie as a whole. And so I would say the humour works for the most part, but it is, I think, due to sort of the different types of humour that is sort of implemented, you know, sort of woven in through the experience, it doesn't always land or hit in the way that I felt like it was intended to. Or maybe that's just me personally, and it just, unfortunately, it just, you know, it just didn't work for me, but it's going to work for a lot of other people. And so I found this aspect to be a little frustrating as well, because really this sort of the style of humour that we have here is the style of humour that really should have worked for me, because it's the type of humour that I really gravitate towards. But unfortunately, it didn't always work. But as a whole, I found this to be an incredibly compelling and mesmerizing experience. And even though for me personally, it didn't quite suck me in emotionally like I wanted it to, I still felt the thrill of sort of what the journey in which these characters are on. And a lot of that is just down to how these moments are brought to life technically, with how the camera would be used. Like, there's a road chase scene in the third act, and I just adored how the camera would be used within that moment. It almost had like a kind of like an Alfred Hitchcock sort of vibe to it. It was a very Alfred Hitchcock moment in which sort of this chase scene is brought to life visually, and then is elevated by the cinematography, by being shot on 35mm, using these Vista Vision cameras. And, you know, the film did get me caught up in the moment. It gets me on the thrill of sort of what these characters and the journey that they're on. And it pulls me in, but it doesn't pull me in deep enough to kind of really feel that kind of the emotional core or that beating heart of its story in a way where I can come out of it feeling like, whoa, you know, that is a movie that definitely put me on an emotional roller coaster ride. It's a roller coaster ride, but lacking the kind of the depth, the emotional depth that I really sort of wanted from it, or what I felt like it was attempting at sort of creating. You know, it's a journey that explores themes of extremism, polarization, power, paranoia and surveillance, as well as family and legacy. And all these themes are interwoven to create a striking and powerful experience. Even with its flaws, the film effectively gets its message across in a way that is both visually and sonically compelling. But for me personally, lacking the pulse or heart of its relationship and circumstances of father and daughter. And unfortunately, I just couldn't get sort of swallowed up sort of within this story on an incredibly deep level when it came to sort of the emotional aspect and what it is that these characters are going through sort of emotionally and sort of what their story is. And I just think a big part of that is just the style of the movie. It's the character of the movie. Paul Thomas Anderson achieves so much with this film. It's a gorgeous, beautiful, immersive, mesmerizing experience that there is an array of emotions there, but it doesn't always work for me. It's not always successful at evoking those emotions from me. It just at times lacks the substance and depth within its writing. And a lot of that is just down to sort of, I think, the style in which this movie is made and sort of the narrative and the structure. And it's as a result of that is why it, for the most part, it works. Like, I really like the movie, and so even with its flaws, sort of those flaws that I had personally, which I think a lot of people are going to disagree with, even with those flaws, I found it an incredibly thrilling, powerful, at times an intense experience that just sucked me in, and a lot of it, again, like I said, is down to the performances and how the story is brought to life technically with the camera and just visually, and just that beautiful, gorgeous score by Jonny Greenwood. So not one that I loved. I didn't come out of it loving it, and maybe I will one day. I think it's, you know, the movie definitely stayed with me. It stayed with me, like, visually and just sonically. Like, this movie, it's kind of burnt into my memory. And that's a good thing. It's a film that definitely left a mark or left an impact. But I just felt like I needed something a little bit more intense when it came to that emotional sort of aspect of its story and journey in which the characters are on. And I just wish the humour had worked perhaps a little bit more consistently for me. At times it does feel random. But this definitely could be one of those experiences that the more I watch, it could end up becoming incredibly more powerful and more intense for me, maybe. But these were my thoughts. This is how I felt watching it for the first time. I really liked it. I really, really like this film. I highly recommend it. And so, yeah, they are my thoughts on one battle after another. And I will be giving one battle after another. So yeah, they are my thoughts on one battle after another. But what do you guys think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if we want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next reviews will be for, when it comes to cinema releases anyway, will be for The Smashing Machine and Him. I'm really looking forward to the both of them. I think I've said this from day one. I'm a massive fan of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and I've said for years now that Dwayne Johnson has got his moment coming. His moment is coming. You know, you had it with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator 2, and you also had it with Stallone and Copland, and I just think, he's another one of those actors that, has his moment, and I think this is going to be it. I'm really excited for it, and I'm just a big fan of Dwayne Johnson. I just adore his work ethic. And then you've got Him, which I'm also very, very intrigued by, and so they're going to be my next two reviews. And just another big thank you to everyone that has supported the channel, connected to the channel, whether it be commenting, liking, subscribing. It means the absolute world to me. And just a massive hello to those most recent subscribers, and thank you for joining me on this journey. I absolutely love doing this, and I'm looking forward to sort of the future of this channel. There's so much that I want to do with it, and I can't do that without your support. So yeah, enough rambling from me. That's it from me for now, guys. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be catching you guys soon.